Today in this video, I am comparing these three microphones, the Behringer BA85A, the SM58 from Shure, and the Shure Beta 58A. My reason for this comparison is that I am getting back into podcasting together with Nicole, my partner, and she's doing a podcast, I'm doing podcasts, and sometimes we do podcasts together. And for this, we wanted to figure out which of these three microphones might be the best for the job. In terms of pricing between these three, we are looking at the Behringer BA85 as the cheapest, then we have the SM58, and then the Beta 58A is the most expensive out of these three, so that you have a bit of a feel for this. However, in terms of the frequency range they pick up, in terms of the build, in terms of even the build quality and all of those things, these three microphones are almost identical. But in one technical specification, they are actually quite significantly different. And for me, as someone who is going to be traveling a lot soon, that makes a huge difference. The Behringer is with 320 grams the most heavy. Then we have the Shure SM58 with 298 grams. And then last we have the Shure Beta 58A, which is 278 grams. So this is like 40 grams of difference between these two microphones. But it's also almost like 10 times as expensive as the Behringer BA85. Now, the most important differentiation, though, is the sound. And that's something that we are going to compare now. And then later in the video, I actually also have some sound samples for you. Now, this is the Behringer BA85A. And now you can hear me speaking directly into this microphone. And this is how this microphone sounds without any pop filtering. And this, of course, is as I am hand holding it. Generally speaking, and in terms of like what I gathered from my experience with the sound samples that I have generated with this microphone and these other microphones, which you will listen to in a moment, this microphone is a little bit quieter than the other two microphones. But it is modeling the Beta 58A pretty closely, because as you can see, this is actually kind of trying to be the same microphone. Now, I criticized last year that the Shure Beta 58 or 57A is a highly counterfeited microphone. But this is something that is completely different from going in there and saying we want to mimic this microphone, but we are going to do it with a different style or a different naming. So in this case, the naming is different. The brand is actually saying we are Behringer and we are making a microphone that is kind of mimicking the Beta 58A in style and sound and all of those things. But we are not going to try to sell you on the idea that you're actually picking up a Beta 58A. This is how it sounds as you have been listening to this. And of course, you should normally put a pop filter on here, but I wanted to give you the raw sound of this microphone. Now, the second microphone is the SM58. This is a industry staple if it comes to handheld vocal microphones. However, what I found in my listening tests was that this has a huge bottom range of frequencies, meaning it is almost rumbly. So this is a microphone when you really want to get that information in there in terms of like boosting the lows, but it can also be to your detriment because you might have to push them down later on in the recording. In terms of handling noise rejection, when you're passing these microphones between your hands, this microphone is bang in the middle. The Beta 58A is kind of the best of the bunch in terms of that. It is not as reverberant when you're, for example, tapping different parts of the microphone. And the Behringer, on the other hand, is very reverberant and you're like almost feeling like it goes on and on and on when you just have little disturbances. This is pretty much bang in the middle. It's nothing too fancy. It is nothing too bad. It just works really well. And now we have the Beta 58A from Shure. And as I've mentioned before, this is the most expensive, but I'm also going to kind of grab that information already. This is the microphone that I will be going with for the podcast productions that we are doing. It is the most lightweight. It has the best frequency response in terms of just being a nice and even frequency response without picking up too much of the rumble that the SM58 was picking up, but it also gives you that freedom in terms of the handling noise rejection because it has the least pickup in that regard. Of course, this is not to mean that this microphone is perfect in terms of handling noise rejection. It still picks up when you're switching your hands or when you, for example, have the cord kind of scrub around on a desk or something like that. You're still best off holding it very still or having it in a stand like this. But when you're out there creating a podcast, you might not have that luxury. Being the lightest microphone also is quite helpful useful because when you're hand-holding this for about an hour or maybe even 2 hours, when you're doing long-form interview-type podcasts, then this can also be a stark benefit, comparing this with about 40 grams more on the Behringer and 20 grams more on the Shure SM58. Now, I almost forgot to mention what's in the box and how these microphones come in terms of like accessories. All of these microphones have some kind of microphone holder with the additional screw mount adapter, depending on what kind of tripod you might use. So basically you can use any of these microphones with any microphone stand. Something to note is that the Behringer BA 85A has a clamp that is incredibly sturdy or closed, so that's something to be aware of. In terms of storage, with the Behringer BA 85, you get a plastic box or like a suitcase almost, and in there you have a nice place to store your microphone as well as the microphone holder, and this of course is a protective cover for those microphones. Whether you need this or not is a different question, because Shure, on the other hand, does this very differently. There you just simply get a pouch with a ziplock, and there you can just store your microphone inside so that it doesn't get scratched up or anything. I don't necessarily care either way. For me, the box would be way too heavy and also way too big to carry around. These microphones are pretty much indestructible anyways, so that shouldn't be a problem at all. Overall, I feel like this microphone gives me the best overall sound recording in the Zoom F6, which is a 32-bit float audio recorder, because I like to do my post-processing after the fact. If you want a live, really good sound, then the SM58 is a powerful microphone because it gives you that low-end boost when you want it. And of course, when you're strapped for a budget, then the Behringer BA 85A is a powerful microphone, because I was honestly surprised based on the sound that this thing produces. It's not quite as loud in terms of the recording that comes out of the Beta 58A, but it gives you an almost identical sound, except for, of course, the handling noise, which is the worst out of these three. But when you're doing this microphone on a stand, or maybe you're just going to work around this and you're conscious about it, then this Behringer BA 85 can also be an absolutely stellar microphone. None of these are really bad choices, but it is best to make an informed decision about which microphone might be the best for you. And that's why I'm going to give you now the sound samples of all of these three in terms of how they sound with a pop filter, without a pop filter, on a stand a little bit further away, and also handheld, and of course also the handling noise rejection test. Now first up, a test with the microphone standing on a desk with the distance once really close up and then further away to see how that reacts. Dig deep within yourself, for there's a fountain of goodness ever to flow if you will keep digging. Dig deep within yourself, for there's a fountain of goodness ever to flow if you will keep digging. Dig deep within yourself, for there's a fountain of goodness ever to flow if you will keep digging. Dig deep within yourself, for there's a fountain of goodness ever to flow if you will keep digging. Dig deep within yourself, for there's a fountain of goodness ever to flow if you will keep digging. Dig deep within yourself, for there's a fountain of goodness ever to flow if you will keep digging. Now in the next test, I am hand-holding these microphones with a foam windscreen. Dig deep within yourself, for there's a fountain of goodness ever to flow if you will keep digging. Dig deep within yourself, for there's a fountain of goodness ever to flow if you will keep digging. Now I'm hand-holding the Shure SM58. This is how it sounds with the pop filter. As I move it a little bit on to the side, this is how the Shure SM58 sounds with a pop filter off to the side. Dig deep within yourself, for there's a fountain of goodness ever to flow if you will keep digging. Dig deep within yourself, for there's a fountain of goodness ever to flow if you will keep digging. And now we have the hand holding without a pop filter test. Dig deep within yourself, for there's a fountain of goodness ever to flow if you will keep digging. Dig deep within yourself, for there's a fountain of goodness ever to flow if you will keep digging. Dig deep within yourself, for there's a fountain of goodness ever to flow if you will keep digging. Dig deep within yourself, for there's a fountain of goodness ever to flow if you will keep digging. Dig deep within yourself, for there's a fountain of goodness ever to flow if you will keep digging. Dig deep within yourself, for there's a fountain of goodness ever to flow if you will keep digging. And now we also have the handling noise rejection test, where I'm passing the microphone back and forth and tapping on the body. This is how it sounds when I'm passing the microphone now without the pop filter. Now in this test, I found the Beta 58A sounds the cleanest. It has the least prolonged reverberances when I'm tapping the microphone or I have the handling of the cable or something. The Shure SM58 has a bit more of that reverberance and a little more of the low end again, because it is pronouncing that low end based on the frequency spectrum. And then the Behringer BA85, to my ears personally, doesn't really work when you're hand holding it. The way that the reverberances are pronounced and prolonged is really something that I find quite annoying. When you're using this microphone on a stand, on a desk, or a boom arm or something like that, then this is not a problem at all because it sounds really good. But when you're hand holding it, I would prefer either the SM58 or the Beta 58A. And now, last but not least, we have the direction rejection test. Because all of these microphones are supercardioid microphones, meaning they should pick up less from the behind and from the sides, this is something that you can now listen to as well. This is the sound of the Shure Beta 58A from the front of the microphone. As I twist it around to the 90-degree angle, this is the Shure Beta 58A from the side of the microphone. And I'm going fully around to the back. This is how the Shure Beta 58A sounds from behind the microphone. Now I go back to 90 degrees, and this is how it sounds from the front of the microphone. This is how the Shure SM58 sounds right from the front. As I twist it around to the 90-degree angle, this is how the Shure SM58 sounds right from 90 degrees. Now I am twisting it fully around to the behind of the microphone. This is how the Shure SM58 sounds from behind the microphone. Going back to 90 degrees, this is how it sounds, and fully to the front, this is how the Shure SM58 sounds. This is how the Behringer BA85 sounds right from the front. Now I'm going over to the 90-degree angle, and this is how the Behringer BA85A sounds from 90 degrees. As I twist it fully around to behind the microphone, now I'm speaking from behind the microphone. Turning back to 90 degrees, and this is how it sounds from right in the front. And now this concludes my testing of these three microphones for podcasting. As I've mentioned in the beginning, I am going with the Shure Beta 58A because it's lightweight, it sounds really good and gives me a clean audio recording with the least amount of hand-holding noises, and of course also a loud signal, meaning I don't have to worry about the noise floor as much. Recording into the Zoom F6, I also have the 32-bit float audio recording, which means I have the maximum flexibility in post-processing. So now you know what I'm picking up for my podcast setup, but your choice might be different. Maybe you're on a budget with the Behringer BA85A, or you prefer the low voice tone of the Shure SM58. Now whatever you choose, please let me know in the comment section down below what you're doing with it. Whether you're launching a podcast or starting a singing career, doesn't matter, I'm really curious. And now, of course, please give this video a thumbs up if it was helpful, share it with a friend that might need a podcasting microphone, and I'm looking forward to see you in one of my other videos. Ciao, ciao!